It was always focusing on the bigger goal, but I realized I had to do everything one step at a time to get there. Even if it's 1 hour working on a design for a new illusion, just one thing a day, at least making one step is the first step.
It's not often we have world famous illusionists on the show, and it's not often we have stars of America's Got Talent that have gone on to the finals and created massive success for themselves. And also he made headlines all over the world for making one of the world's most famous singers disappear. Yeah, he made Adele disappear.
One of my first things I did, I contracted a theme park in Japan for 6 months. I was on billboards, I was on TV ads in Japan. I thought, okay, it's finally happening. Now looking back, it was the worst theme park and the worst gig ever.
I want to know when people make it, what is it you did? Because a lot of people think what you must have done was magical.
Looking back, if you compare it to most people, it is. But how I got here now, I would say persistence, not giving up on the dream, not letting myself give in to the excuses is a big part of it.
This is really important what you're saying here. Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of the podcast. Before I start, many of you subscribe, but so many of you don't subscribe to this YouTube channel, and I know you're watching this content. If you could subscribe, it would mean the world to me. And the more subscribers I get, quite simply translates into better and better guests for you, my wonderful audience, to enjoy. If you're listening to this on any podcast app, if you could leave us a follow, a review, any feedback at all, I would really appreciate it. I don't even mind if you don't like the show or you think I could improve the show. That kind of feedback is always valuable as well. So if you can, please do. Now, onto the show. I can't wait to share the story of endurance of this incredible person that is not only a creative genius, but also a very smart business person. Please welcome to the show, the incredible Rob Lake. This episode is proudly sponsored by Allsop & Allsop Private Office, Dubai's first ever homegrown private advisory for the ultra luxury property market. Now they're catering exclusively to high net worth individuals, ultra high net worth individuals, and family offices. They offer exceptional comprehensive advisory services with the utmost confidentiality and discretion. Bringing an elevated real estate experience that extends beyond property sales, the division is powered by the highest level of advisors in the Dubai property market. A select and dedicated team that brings unparalleled and comprehensive expertise to meet the needs of their elite clients. For a redefined era of luxury living in Dubai, schedule a consultation today for bespoke information and expert guidance. Well, Rob, thank you for coming to join us today.
Thanks for having me.
We have an illusionist in the house.
We do.
I've never said that before on the show. There's a first one for me. So you're here in Dubai, you've got a show coming up fairly soon, and you've been traveling around the world with this phenomenal show that you've been delivering. It exhausts me just talking to you before we started, considering how much time you spend on the road doing what you do.
Yeah, 90% of the year in over 60 countries.
And for how long?
I've been doing this over 20 years about this schedule.
20 years?
Mm-hmm.
You don't look old enough.
Bless you. That's the illusion part.
So let's go back to the beginning of the journey, because then a lot of people will see you. They've seen you either on social media, on television and whatnot. They've got comfortable with it, or they've seen your shows. They're in this kind of this performer, but there's a human being behind that, isn't there?
There is. It's all about me, and the performer they see on stage is me, just parts of my personality magnified. When I'm not on stage, I'm a lot more laid back, a lot more introverted, a lot more collective and reserved. But on stage, I extract parts of my personality and bring them up and turn those volumes of those elements up more.
And arguably, what you do on stage is just essentially the pinnacle of all of the work that you do, because of how much preparation, planning, design, construction, idea, creative needs to go into putting that together.
Absolutely. It never ends. I'm always working on improvements for the show or new illusions or new ideas. I'm always asking what if. And so I'm always pushing myself further, or taking things I've done for years and saying, but what if we did it this way? Can we make it better? Can we make it faster? Can we make it more deceptive, more amazing? I just never settle. And people ask, how long will I do this? Will I ever retire? And as long as I'm asking what if and enjoying it and having fun and pushing myself more, I don't see that as an option.
Let's talk about your youth and your childhood, because I remember my grandfather was part of the Magic Circle, and when I was a boy, he said to me, he had a room in his house.
Yeah.
Okay. And so he had a grand house, but he had this room. I wasn't allowed in this room. But one day he took me into the room and he sat me down and I was mesmerized by what I could see. He said, "I'll teach you one trick." And I'm like, "What about that one? What about that one?" And he said, "No, one. I'll teach you one. You master that, then I'll teach you another one. Okay, that's how it's going to work." And so he taught me how to do one and I was busy away working. I must have been 7 or 8 years old.
Sure.
Because my granddad, he was my hero as well.
Of course.
That was just like really exciting for me. And I felt very privileged to be in that environment. Tell me how magic came into your life and what kind of impact it had on you in the early stages.
Well, growing up, my heroes were, and honestly, today they still are, Walt Disney, Jim Henson, directors like Steven Spielberg and Ron Howard, people who are true visionaries and create wonder and enchantment. So, in my favorite movies growing up were Wizard of Oz, the Narnia series, and it wasn't as much the escapism, it was this overall sense of wonder. And for me, it translated the most to productions. I would go to the public library as a kid, and my biggest interests were these, coffee table designer, these thick books on the making of movies or movie magic or behind the scenes or of a Broadway show. I was always fascinated by production, I guess, and entertainment. But when I was 10 years old, I saw a magic show, and I knew that moment I would be a magician or a stage illusionist. I just knew that night. It was as though I had received my divine instructions downloaded into me. And everyone thought, oh, what a cute little hobby. But for me, I knew it. And I immediately went to the library. I got every book they had on magic. I would drive my friends, my relatives, my neighbors, everyone crazy with magic tricks. And I always knew I'd be doing a stage show. So I would research even from just starting magic. That's probably the same tricks your grandfather taught you. I would be working on those, but I would also be reading these library books on stage illusionists and trying to understand their thinking because I just knew, somehow I knew my whole life, this is what I would do.
I want to try and understand what kind of a little boy you were.
Yeah.
And that type of environment you lived in, because it seems to me that it's very solitary, busy learning a magic trick on your own and whatnot. It's not like a team sport where you're out
right,
playing football or baseball and stuff. It's kind of, and it wouldn't make you naturally fit in.
Yeah. I grew up in Oklahoma, which is not an entertainment mecca at all. We have, it's not at all. But they're trying it in the film industry now. But no, I grew up, we have college football and, in oil and that's Oklahoma. A great place, I grew up in the suburbs, perfect American life. But my parents were really good at making sure I would not just lock myself away. They, they literally forced me to do, t-ball or soccer or football or, all the basketball, all the sports, which I hated. But I also, I was very social in school. I was active in student council and other things. I was a runner in high school. So I was very active, but I would always come back to that passion, to that magic. And when I was in high school, my friends would be out doing, partying and drinking and all those things kids do on the weekends. But I would be doing shows for birthday parties or for civic groups or churches. And I was never felt like it was a loner type of thing. For me, I was so driven from a young age, and I had this passion and this. When I have this inside of you so much, it really pushes you forward. And the other stuff was not as relevant. So I never felt like really lonely as a kid. I never felt. I probably felt impatient as myself that my dreams weren't happening as fast as I was dreaming them up. But it was nothing that really slowed me down, or I didn't want to say, oh, I want to quit doing magic to go socialize. I was so excited to get the next month's magic magazine or catalog in the mail and just study every single word. And that passion really drove me. Like I said, it was almost like at 10 years old, I knew this is my goal and my purpose in life.
But I mean, being passionate about magic and learning magic and being into it for you is one angle. There's another angle of being able to then put that together and show it to someone and watch them go, how did you do that? Of course. Yeah. And bear in mind, you're a kid. So what was more exciting for you? Learning it because you were just fascinated by the subject, or actually watching the eyes and the reactions of people when you were able to do something?
Absolutely. All of the work is for the reaction. All of the drive is to be able to create that. It's not like I want to trick them and feel better than them because no one really likes to be tricked or fooled. It's more about creating this moment where you see just the look on their face, and this from as a kid to today, where not only is how did you do that, but is that even possible? It transcends the how did he do that? The skepticism to a sense of wonder and this just enchanted experience, which is really what I would always go for.
Did you get the girls?
Looking back, I probably could have got a lot more than I wanted to, but I was so focused, but also it was probably still the nerdier thing too. But I was well-rounded enough that, yes, I did magic, but I wasn't, and I was known for that, but that wasn't the only thing I was known for.
Mm. And so how did your mum and dad react to you wanting to be heavily involved in it?
Once it became a major obsession, they were a little worried, and they definitely encouraged me to do other things more. And looking back, they were very supportive. I took over the whole house. I would build illusions in the garage, and they couldn't park their cars in the garage for months because I'd have rehearsals and take over the whole house. And they would have to drive me to my little shows all the time and give up their things. So they were very supportive, but they also were very encouraging for me to diversify interests and talents, and which I did. Like I became a runner and other things too. And they also made sure, I learned early on, that the dark side of show business, just bad people, is bad egos. And, my parents helped me navigate those challenges. Or, as a school kid, my assistants were my high school friends and classmates. I would, here's $20, come do the show for me. When they wouldn't show up or they'd flake, I learned about personnel and, operate a business. As a 13-year-old, 12-year-old, I had a business checking account and, business card. So they helped me navigate all of that and learn the business side of show business early on. But they really were encouraging me strongly to diversify and do other activities in addition to magic. And I do think that helped a lot in everything I do.
When did you decide to have a conversation with them to let them know that this was going to be your career and you would go down that path?
Yeah. When I was 20, I just left college. I didn't go to my final tests. I just walked out and I said, if I'm going to do this magic career, I need to go for it. And it's one of those things, I know myself, I've always been able to bite off a little bit more than I can chew, and then chew like hell. It's how I work. It's how I always go, push for excellence. And same if I'm doing a triathlon or something for fun, I always push myself just a little bit further, but knowing it will take work. So I was in a position when I was 20, and I went to college after high school because you're supposed to, and everyone does in the US, and I was studying health and exercise science because I said, pick something. I knew I would do magic, so I just picked something I was curious to learn about and study. And about 2 years in, I said, wait a minute, this is a whole different trajectory and path than what I want to do and need to do. And I knew myself, if I don't burn the safety boats, I will always probably rely on that backup. So I knew I had to put myself in a sink or swim position, otherwise it would never happen. Now, I was very naive looking back, and it took years to, for things to click. But when I was 20, and I left school, there was a lot of bribery, encouragement, support, anything I would do to go back and finish a degree and, do that. And, I was learning the hard way, the truth and reality of business takes a while to start and to get picked up. I thought immediately, because I want it so bad and I've been studying so long, it would happen. Not at all. It took years.
Were there times during that process where you just, as a business, it wasn't working?
Oh, absolutely. It took years.
Literally no money, didn't know the next step, didn't know how to fight your way out.
Absolutely. It happened regularly. But every time I was close to basically surrendering, I had no choice but, throwing my hands up, said, well, now what do I do? Every single instance looking back, right when I get to that point of kind of having to surrender or close to throwing the towel, one little thing would happen that would just, fix the problem and launch me to the next step.
And so land you another gig, which would
pay the bill. Absolutely. And not only that,
above water.
Right. And I, one of my first things I did, I got a contract at a theme park in Japan for 6 months. And I thought, I was on billboards, I was on TV ads in Japan. I thought, okay, it's finally happening. Now looking back, it was the worst theme park and the worst gig ever. The roof leaked, so if it was raining, the stage was flooded. The stage had green AstroTurf as a covering, it was, but there were more, we were lucky if 10 people showed up to not just my show, the whole park. It was just, but I was getting paid to be halfway around the world doing what I loved. And I was on the billboards, the ads, and I really thought, okay, this is it. Now, after that, I went to other places and I did some cruise ships and things, but I was also very strategic. I could have stayed on the cruise ships my whole life, made a great salary, but I realized when I was doing cruises, there was no way to go up in the world. I've had lofty goals, and I knew that if I was stuck on a boat, great pay, great life, there was no way for me to grow. And so I didn't like that. So I left that, and I always have kind of taken a calculated risk. What can I do to get the bigger gigs, to get the bigger jobs, to elevate myself more and more, to push myself further? And so even whenever I kind of would settle in, think, oh, I've got this cruise thing, and I did a few different lines, I got offers. I was like, there's no way I will get to my goal if I stay here. So I would have to make those risks, and sometimes they'd pay off, and sometimes they would pay off after a long time.
I remember when I was about 23 years old, I was working in the Far East, and I got a paycheck one month, and I'd not been long working at this company, but I got this commission check, and it was £3,400. And I felt like I'd won the lottery.
Sure.
It was this huge amount of money to me, and I was like, holy macaroni, I have arrived.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I went to the Armani store, and I bought this Armani polo shirt, and I just stood in the store, and I was like, yes.
Yeah.
And it was like $90, which was like an
sure
big amount of
course.
there. But I wore it to death, you know.
Of course, absolutely, yeah.
I was so proud of the fact that I'd earned this money and I could buy this designer polo shirt. And it was like this real moment for me, and I was like, yes.
Yeah.
When was that moment for you when you got a paycheck and you were like?
I think it was, the Japan thing was big because they really made me, the billboards alone. I actually, in the middle of the night, on the last night of the show, I snuck out with my crew. We cut it down to take it home and save it. I mean, so that was, seeing the billboard, I mean, the paycheck probably was, it was probably pathetic, and I was probably losing money to be there, but I was there. But as far as an actual check, the first time I did Disney Cruise Lines, because Walt Disney was my hero. I've been inspired by the Disney parks and resorts and Imagineers who created my whole life. So I think I actually framed that Disney Cruise Line check, on my wall. I think because that was a big thing. I'd worked for the Disney company. Since then I've done a lot of work and I did a lot of checks from them. But that was another time that I did it. But the thing that I really think not only made me say, okay, this is it, but also my family, was when I was headlining in Atlantic City, which is like the Las Vegas of the East Coast. And my parents had been getting calls from their friends saying, hey, we've seen your son on billboards. We've seen your son on TV. And that was when they had finally said, maybe he's onto something here. And I think when they relaxed, it also helped me relax more too. But also that was a big turning point too, because it was the biggest casino in town. We were sold out for the whole season. It was great. And it really put us on the map of credibility with the entertainment industry.
Wow. Yeah, it's that being recognized for your work, isn't it? And realizing that, I am what I always wanted to be. I am that person now.
Yeah. It's like, this is what I've created, and it finally came through. But as a creative, you're only as good as the next ladder rung ahead. So once you feel that feeling, you feel it for a moment and then reach for the next one.
And I suppose, arguably, as a creative, that you've always got the worry of is there a time horizon that what you do is valuable and interesting to people? Do people run their us musicians have this famous, don't they? There's 3 amazing albums, and then they make another 10 albums, and nothing really comes of it. And so they hang on to those 3 albums for the rest of their lives. While I'm on that subject, you made Adele disappear.
I did. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, one of the most famous musicians in the world.
Yes.
Yeah, and how dare you make Adele disappear?
Hey, she asked for it. No, she's also amazing to work with. I had to, is it right before, in fact, I came to Dubai the last time directly from that show opening. I flew directly from that opening of that show to here for the show. But it was a secret project I worked on for almost a year. I couldn't tell anyone. I just, we had to postpone shows. We had to move a lot of things around to do it. But they called and wanted some magic and some special effects in the show, and I got to work with that team, which was a dream. And it was one of the most rewarding and fun experiences of my life. It was just fun. I got to create magic and illusions that I would never do myself, but under this really strange and unusual circumstance. So it was a very creative challenge, and I love to have a good challenge.
Yeah, I mean, how cool is that? Talk to me about America's Got Talent, because a lot of people watch this on TV. Obviously, we have BGT in the UK, which is very, very famous, and we see these people come on, and you go to YouTube and watch the clips of the people that do the auditions that are terrible, and you have a good old laugh at those, and then you have the golden buzzer auditions.
Absolutely.
And I don't think people really understand what's involved. Yeah, I think they just think, that's the beginning, the door opener of their journey.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that there was a lot that went into that. First of all, how do you get in touch with them and what's the process?
Sure. So they'd been calling me. We were on season 13. So they'd been calling me for 11 or 12 years asking to do the show. And we came close a few times and just didn't work out tours. I was already touring. I was already doing casinos and theaters, and I was already had a successful business. And we said no, mostly because it's a 90+ page contract where they will own you for life if they choose. And I just said, it's not worth it. We're already doing shows. We're already, I'm finally to a point of success in my life. And I didn't see it changing our business model very much. And so they finally called. I was in Lake Tahoe, which is another big casino and resort destination. And they called that summer and said, we really, really want you. Is there any way you do this? And we'd had a couple setbacks. I was with a business manager who I hadn't been doing a good job. So we were kind of in a position where I said, if something doesn't change, we need to do something just to push ahead. And a friend of mine who works in media and news and entertainment said, I don't think you understand the reach of the show. And I said, what do you mean? He said, this is one of the biggest viewerships in the world. He said, this would really be good for your marketing. And so I said, I'll consider it. And they basically said on the show, mark out what you don't like in the contract and we'll see if we can make it work. Well, we marked out the whole thing and they said, okay. So we went on the show and my schedule was so booked up that I thought I could only do one episode. And so we did the first round and I walked on that stage and I truthfully, I don't watch much TV. I travel most of the time, and if I do watch TV, it's not reality TV. And I underestimated the value of the show. I'm on the stage, and I told my family, I said, we're filming this show. I told them, don't even bother coming. It's not even that big of a deal. And I'm on the stage. There are 300 crew members working the show. This thing is massive. And I said to somebody, how many viewers do you get per? I said, well, 15 to 20 million per episode. I'm like, so I said, wow, this is a big deal. We did so well in that first round, I actually moved heaven and earth to do the next few rounds. Like I was on tour in Europe. I had to pause the Europe tour. Everyone else had been in LA filming all the behind the scenes stuff and, everything else for the episode and then the performance. But my crew, I kept one illusion for round 2 in the States with a whole duplicate crew. So the only part that had to move was me. I paused my tour, barely made my flight in Germany, flew all the way to LA, straight from the airport to the studio and hair and makeup, perform the illusion, stay up all night doing behind the scenes. They brought my family out at that point. We actually filmed my family interviews on the set of Desperate Housewives in those homes because, they recorded and flew back and did my tour. And then I canceled the last few weeks of my show at Atlantis, Bahamas to do the final round that we're on out there. And, but I knew I wouldn't go past that because there's no way I could have done it schedule-wise. I canceled so many things I couldn't have done that last round. But so we went on thinking, okay, we'll do this one performance at the beginning and maybe we'll get 1 million YouTube views. Well, my first video got over 70 or 80 million views.
Wow.
Yeah. So and that was within a year because they scrubbed their YouTube channel. That was official. They scrub it every season, so just wipe it clean for the new season come in. So we luckily screenshotted and grabbed it right before it went off. But so it was amazing that how popular those shows are. And how just by the nature of it, their clips and their content just goes viral. And so did it change our business or our bookings? I don't know that it did or didn't. It definitely helps with marketing and VR. And definitely, I think it introduced me to people all around the world. And then from there, we did Italy's Got Talent and a thing in Germany. We've done other filmings, other places just from them.
Did you enjoy the process?
It was exhausting. And for someone who's in entertainment production, it was... they were not built for reality TV. They kept trying to pit me against, they tried to get me to trash talk other people and do all that. And I see what they were going. So I was able to spin it and say, well, there are different types of magic. And I was able to spin it and take the high road, but also I didn't play the game like that as much. And I was also so busy on tour. I was literally, we were selling out 2 shows a night at the Atlantis Resort Casino in Bahamas. And I was flying back and forth and it's really hard to, act like I'm this kid who just has a dream who's never done anything in his life. It's really hard for me to kind of fit in the mold they were trying to put me in. I liked the performance. I liked the exposure. The process was just honestly exhausting while we're already crazy busy.
And people that have dreams that want to go on and do stuff, 9 times out of 10, they'll be talked out of their dreams.
Absolutely. Oh, they'll usually talk themselves out.
Yeah, and
That's the biggest thing.
Well,
Yeah,
you from a young age decided what you wanted to do and kept working on it.
absolutely.
Well, anyone that's listening and watching this today, they're going to want to know how, because it's so easy to not. You know, I talk about the conscious and the subconscious, where our subconscious wants us to lay on the sofa with the remote control on
or scrolling
and a bag of Cheetos and not do anything, whereas the conscious really needs to pull that through.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how that was for you, how determined you have to be. Talk to me about the business plan you had to go forward and turn it into something. Did you wing a lot of it, or was there dogged determination, or was it, I'm never giving up, here's my process? How was your mindset around that?
It was always focusing on the bigger goal, and not just because I'm here, but being able to perform in Dubai and places like that. It was always, I was laser focused on that, but I realized I had to do everything one step at a time to get there. Even if it's just one call a day trying to book my show, even if it's 1 hour working on a design for a new illusion, just one thing a day, it's like, so to get off the sofa, to stop doom scrolling, just at least making one step is the first step. And to admit, okay, I'm doom scrolling, I need to do this, just say it out loud. And admitting is the first thing. So for people who are stuck in that rut, because especially now, there's so many reasons to not get up or get out. But it's one step.
This is really important what you're saying here. And you jumped over some important things that you said. And I want you to hang those words there just for a minute, because you talked about doom scrolling and say consciously to yourself, I'm doom scrolling. Alex, just make a note of that, because I want him to hold that there. So can we go on that?
Absolutely, yeah.
So there are young people out there that, I talk about the conscious and the subconscious, and they sit there and, you say scrolling, I would say laying on the sofa with a bag of Cheetos on their chest and a remote control, just, not consciously going out there and doing stuff. How did you apply yourself? What I really want to know is, because I want to know when people make it, what is it you did? Like, what did you do? Because a lot of people think, oh, here we go, I'm going to say something weird. What you must have done was magical.
True. And looking back, it was. Is it? No, looking back, if you compare it to most people, it is. How I got to where I am now, and again, I'm still only focused on what's coming next. For me, I'm like, oh yeah, we've done this. I have to remind myself, I've done this. But how I got here now, I would say persistence is a big part of it. Not giving up, and not giving up on the dream. Not letting myself give into the excuses is a big part of it. And I say to my team a lot, if this wasn't someone else's show and we were watching it, what would we say as feedback? And we have to be truthful. So not giving to excuses, being persistent and honest about where I am and what I could do better, and just realizing if I can do something better, then if I'm aware of it, then shame on me for not. So that's a lot of it. But the other thing is just one step at a time. One phone call to get a gig. One phone call for an introduction, 1 hour creating a marketing flyer, brochure, poster, or email, one step at a time. This was, when people think I went on AGT, they think, oh, he came out of his garage and wanted to do these illusions. I'd been touring those illusions for years before we put them on TV with AGT. They were so polished and perfected, I could have done them in my sleep. And that's why they went so well on TV, because they were, because I could do them in my sleep. But that AGT, that instant explosion, came from my entire life since I was 10 years old, working towards this every single day. And it's that persistence, it's that consistency, and it's realizing that, yes, I want to be in Dubai performing in an arena, which I am now, but I couldn't have done that when I was 20 and left college. I had to do everything to get to that point, one step at a time. Take the miserable theme park show in Japan and learn from that and grow from that. But even on that, I said, I'm in this park and even then I subconsciously realized there's astroturf and the rain is coming in on the stage. But I realized if I don't make the most of this, shame on me. And I made sure that I videotaped every single show, and I did 5 or 6 a day. And I watched those videos and said, what can I do to make myself better? So my performance level from the first show to the last show, I used 6 months of a paid time to rehearse and polish and get myself better. So it's one step at a time, and it's being truthful and not letting you give yourself excuses.
You talk about being humble enough, essentially, to be able to be critical of yourself so that you can grow. So that's really being conscious about ego, parking ego. Yeah. But what I also hear as well is I was on an apprenticeship, whether it was cruise ships, whether it was in Japan. This is my apprenticeship.
Absolutely.
This is my learning year. Yeah. And in the early stages, we might not get paid a lot of money in cash, but we get paid a lot of money in education.
And that's invaluable.
Yeah.
And I had 2 mentors growing up. One was a comedy magician from my hometown. He passed away way too soon. And then the other one was turns out the first magic show I saw. He was a big illusionist in the U.S. and they both mentor me. And when I would call and woe is me and oh, I got burned by this agent or this other person, they would almost chuckle and say, "You're learning such invaluable lessons right now." Even if it's learning how you don't want to, if you don't like how you're treated, you learn how you never want to treat people yourself. So really, all of these things, anytime I've had a big experience like the Atlantic City Casino or some other things, it's almost like I kind of have this moment of reflection and I realize that I would not have been able to do this if I hadn't learned all of those, those obstacles and those challenges. If I hadn't learned the lessons from them, I would never have gotten here to this point.
Do the other performers that work with you have a shelf life?
Yeah.
And because they have their own hopes and dreams.
Absolutely.
As well, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. And during the pandemic, we lost a lot of great people. I'd had a team that had been with me for almost 10, 12 years. And when the world stopped, they paused and said, "Hey, and they were all very respectful. And they said, we just never intended this to be our life. Most of my dancers went off and several had already been married. They said, now's the time I'm going to have babies and do that. My stage manager, who I hired many years before because he was a good friend and I could trust him, he said, this has been a wonderful journey and adventure, but I never want to do it. So he's now in the medical field. Now, they still would fly out and help us as we've been rebuilding a new team from the shows. But it's something I have to let go and keep moving forward.
As a business person, you sell tickets for events. And
sure.
That's how you make your money.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if we just talk about that as a business model, then all of a sudden you can't do events. So you can't sell tickets. How did you then make money?
Well, most of all, we didn't during the pandemic.
Okay. How long was that period of time where you couldn't go onto stages?
So it was a full 2 years. And even it should have been, I should say 2.5, because the theaters that did bring us back, people in the States were not ready to have you back. It was really about 2.5 years before we were able to get back to normal, and people would say, "Oh, we're going to book you," and then they'd pull back. We did virtual shows, but I did not want to be a guy doing card tricks in my living room. So we turned my warehouse into a soundstage so we could film, for some conventions and corporate events, we filmed large scale, TV specials basically. But even that, because I'm so lofty and creative, we would lose money on those because I wanted multi-cameras. I wanted all the setup. It's like, because again, I wanted to put out the content at the level I wanted to be in and not just be in my t-shirt and, my underwear doing card tricks, a camera and and a lot of magicians did that, which is amazing. I would not have been entertained by that. So I didn't want to do it. So we went very elaborate. We turned my warehouse into a sound stage. We put the lights, the video, and we had a whole studio there, which we did these events, but it was not the same. And, if you're a performer and you're used to reading the audience and having that feedback, you get nothing. Your feedback is a lens. So
talk to me about the people in the business. We spoke about having a shelf life, but how do you lead people? I mean, you could be, considering your position, somebody in your position could be arrogant, obnoxious, big-headed, egotistical, could be.
Absolutely.
Okay, because I'm the star. I'm the celebrity. And when we read the press, we sometimes hear these stories of people that get ideas bigger than their station and stuff like that, and divas that only want, blue M&Ms in their bowl and yada, yada, yada with their riders. You run a business.
Yeah.
And so you lead people. So what is your style?
I will never ask someone who works for me to do something I would not do myself. And I grew up, when I was a teenager, I was running Spotlight and working for another magician who was not good at how he treated people. And I could not understand how a human would be that condescending, that mean and terrible to people. And then, they say things like never meet your heroes. I met some other magicians who had been heroes for me. And when you hear the stories about how they are, you just really, I was shocked. And I knew I wouldn't do that way. I also find that I lead best by inspiring and motivating. And my team, they can screw up the show. They do all the work. I got to take the credit when it comes to the show.
Yeah.
But it's a team. And I know we have to work as a team. And if I lift them up, they lift me up. And if I can rely on them, they can rely on me. So it's a really mutual feeling. That's why I had people for 10, 12 years with the show. And it was like a magic family. So we bring people in and we want them to be not just like socially our friends. I'm not hiring people friends, but really who we can. This show is my life, so I'm literally trusting my cast, my crew, my team with my life.
A couple more questions on that. When we talk about the culture that you operate, you talk about what you say, but what role does kindness play?
There's a T-shirt I saw yesterday that said "Kindness and Magic." I said I want to sell those shirts in my merchandise. Absolutely, it's life is too short. We're not solving world peace. We're not doing brain surgery. We're doing magic tricks. We're entertaining people. Life is too short to not be kind. I've sent people home on the crew for having bad attitudes, and it's like because one bad apple can ruin the bunch. It's just not worth it. I want to go to bed at night not feeling like I screwed someone over, did something bad, and I don't want to have people around me who you have to tiptoe on eggshells to be around because of their moods and their inner challenges. So I treat people the way I want to be treated back, and I expect people who work with me to do the same. We want every theater and every crew and every theater to know we respect them and are grateful for being there. And if I see someone on our team who's not acting that way, they're gone. Or we talk to them, they're gone. It's really, life's just too short of an experience. And we're doing magic. This should be the most joyful, wondrous thing in the world. And for people who don't get that and bring that here, it's not worth it for me.
Then when you consider how many tickets you've sold and how many people have you got a ballpark number of how many people you've performed to?
Over 1 million.
Over 1 million people.
That's actual live events and tickets, not including TV. Yeah.
So over 1 million people you've had live events to that have bought a ticket to see one of your shows. Now, in my business, if somebody has spent some money to see me or to become a client of my business, they're called a customer, or a client, one of the two, yeah? And I'm very grateful that they're either a customer or a client because they paid money to me for something, yeah? From time to time, people will ask you for selfies, they will ask for autographs, they will ask for little moments with you. When you see these people that ask for these photos and for these selfies and stuff, do you see them as my customers?
No.
How do you see them?
I see them as my supporters. And I say this at the end of my show, and I really mean it. I thank the audience for allowing me to live my dream and perform for them. And that's how I close my show every night. So thank you all so much for coming. They could have been anywhere in the entire world, but they're here spending their money with me so I can follow my passion and entertain them. And I am really grateful for them, including before I start the show, every time, the moments right before I appear at the beginning of the show, I close my eyes and I just thank the audience for being there because I really am overwhelmed with gratitude that they spent money, and sometimes they save a lot of money up to come see the show and bring their family. And there's a responsibility that goes with that, but more importantly, there's a gratitude that needs to be conveyed with that. Because they could have done anything. They could have gone to a movie or stayed in bed and scrolled, or they could have done anything. But they chose to entrust me with their time, and time is such a valuable asset and commodity. So I'm grateful for that, and I owe it to them. No matter if I'm having a bad day or not feeling good, it doesn't matter. We have this arrangement now where I will give it my best and share my gratitude for them being there.
And of the people that have bought tickets, I'm sure people have bought tickets again and come to see the show again.
We have a lot of repeat attendees.
And yet they're expecting something more. Okay, they're expecting the next step, some evolution. How hard is it to keep evolving? Because that's what sells tickets. The new, the sexy, kind of like the wait till you see what's coming stuff.
It does to some extent, but then you also have shows that have been touring unchanged, like Phantom of the Opera or Les Mis. So, there's also a balance of if they love something so much, they want to come back and bring their friends and experience it again with what it is. Yeah. But for me, it's more about how do I not keep changing? I'm always creative. I'm always working on new illusions. I always have new ideas. I always have things that I'm spending my time. Like Walt Disney said, he did not make movies to make money. He made movies to make money to make more movies. And I totally relate to that. I reinvest everything back into the show, new illusions, new ideas, and it can take years. Some of my illusions have taken decades to make it from idea to the stage. So I'm always pushing or thinking how we can do this. Not as much of the obligation for the audience, because we do have a lot of return people, but more because it's my own curiosity, my own satisfaction for the knowing, what if I had this great idea and how can I do this?
What part of you is an artist and what part of you is a business person? What if you were to split it as a percentage?
Depends on the time of day. Yeah. No, it does. I would say that, artistic part is always there, but I don't get to turn the business hat off unless it's really a show. Because even if I'm designing an illusion, being very creative, I'm still having to be responsible on budget, logistics, how this can fit, if it has to fit on a truck, or, I'm always, even if I'm, letting loose on the creative side, I really have to think with finances and logistics and planning and casting, like, oh, if I do this, it's going to make me have 3 more crew members. I can't afford that. How can I do it? So I'm always having those restrictions in mind, and I don't, the beginning of a process, I run free, but I never really run free because I'm thinking of those things. The performance is the only time I can let go of the business side and go out and do what I do.
That's the only time.
That's the only time.
And when you think about when you were young, you wanted to be a magician. You didn't want to be a business person.
No, not at all.
And so arguably that wouldn't have been a strength of yours, being a business person.
No.
So you would have had to learn.
I had to learn,
or find really good people.
Yeah. Well, I say when I left college, I enrolled in a master's program of the University of Life.
Yeah. Which always ends up costing a lot as well.
Oh, exactly. I mean, so many very costly degrees and experiences.
When you consider how much money you've made over the years, and you look at the money that's been invested to get you there, plus the costs involved in traveling around the world with a group of people, with all of
all the equipment,
and stuff that comes, is there great profit margins in your business?
No,
okay,
not at all.
No, but you're a famous illusionist.
That's right.
Like you're almost a billionaire by now.
Right. And in some way, in some currencies.
So if the profit margins aren't big, arguably you do it because of the love.
Absolutely. And here's, you asked earlier for the people who have a dream or a passion. I do this because I have to, because there's nothing else in the world I would rather do or nothing else I could do. And so when people come to me with a dream, usually from the arts and entertainment, because that's who I'm mostly around, and they say, how do you do this? And I say to them, if there's any other thing you could do in life and be satisfied, do that. If there's nothing else in life you can do but your dream, you have to go for it. And that's where I am. I can't imagine there, things I could say, oh, I would love this, or I'm interested in this. This is what I had to do in life, and I don't regret it at all.
When you look at other people around there, like David Blaine and Siegfried and Roy, these guys that were out for so many years in Las Vegas, and Penn and Teller, and it goes on and on and on. What do you call it? What's his name? The English guy.
No, Paul Daniels.
Dynamo. Oh yeah. Dynamo. Yeah, Paul Daniels passed away many years. It is when I was young. Paul Daniels, goodness me. When you look at those people that are out there nowadays, do you go watch their shows and look at what they're doing and see and get inspiration from them?
Growing up, I did. I studied all of them growing up, and their books and their works. I really get my inspiration now from not magic. Well, I mean, okay, two places. I would say I love old magic books and history biographies of magicians from 1930s, 1940s, 1920s, because they really lay the groundwork for what a magic show is today. They took it from vaudeville to shows, and I get a lot of inspiration from reading what they did and their stories, which are surprisingly very, very similar to my path and my trajectory. I'd be like, oh, I've done those international tours, I've done these things, so it's really familiar. But also I will take an idea, oh, they did this one thing, is written and reviewed here. It's like, oh, that's an interesting concept. And then I'll kind of research on it and see if it strikes a thing. We'll build some models in place. So I get ideas from that. But it's also just, I like to be creative. I get ideas from the Disney parks, from movies, from music. Part of my show was inspired by a song I heard. I said, oh, this song feels very mystical and mysterious and theatrical. And that paved a way for an entire segment of my show.
Interesting. Can anyone do what you do if they want it bad enough?
Anyone can do anything they want to do if they want it bad enough. I'll say that.
You sure?
Absolutely. I really believe if you want it. Okay, no, not if you want it bad enough. If you're willing to work for it. Because a lot of people want things, but that doesn't get you anywhere.
Everybody wants stuff.
Yeah, everyone wants things. But so if they're willing to put the effort in and persistence, then I think anything's possible.
Now, as much as you're a maniac for making that your obsession and building a career out of it, you're also a maniac for a couple of other reasons as well. One in particular is that you're a triathlete.
Yeah.
Okay. Why?
I like kicking my own butt. I do. I mean, and it applies to the show. I'm always pushing myself creatively and doing things harder and for more forceful. I really loved being a runner in high school and for fun in college. And I love swimming. I taught myself how to be a swimmer, a fitness swimmer, and, for fun, competitive swimmer. I just did it, meets for fun. And then I like triathlons. I did them with my dad for a while. He would, just the sprint things, but I really like pushing myself as far as I can. Even today, I did a crazy fitness class before I came here because I just I love that feeling, and I love seeing how far I can push it and take it. And it also allows me to do more in my show. And there's some illusions I do that, some magicians have called me over the years, said, "Hey, we saw a video of this. Can we buy the rights? Can we buy this one?" And I kind of laugh because, like, even if I would never sell it because I like to keep my creations exclusive, but I laugh because even if they did buy it from me, they would not be able to do it because of the endurance and things. There are things I do that I don't think other people in the magical arts understand the lengths I go to be able to achieve them.
And what's that feeling you get when you push yourself and you kick your own butt? It's you don't enjoy the pain, but you like the feeling straight afterwards.
I'm also
Are you actually a bit like what's the guy's name? Can't hurt me.
Oh no! I actually don't like height. Yeah, pain and cocky. Yeah.
Is that
No. Not that at all. It's I know I can do. It's like I said before. I bite off more than I can chew, and it's chew really hard. I like to see how far I can push myself. How, not in an extreme reckless way, but like I like to know if I can do better in anything in life. I like to push myself to get to that point.
Okay, let's talk about something that you and I have got a lot in common with, which is philanthropy and giving back. I work with children that have been sold into child slave labor and sexual slavery when they're young, and I work to help support those. That I got involved in that some time ago through the podcast and created a TV documentary about it. And so, but you care as well. You're a celebrity though. You care because it's good for PR?
No. I actually have been doing this my whole life. Some of my first shows were for benefits and organizations that, and it wasn't because I needed a gig. I was, losing money to do these things. Now I get requests all the time for benefits and charities, and we do as much as I can, especially for causes I can. But ultimately, we're around the world. It's hard to say yes to everything, and we can't. So I have to be more strategic on the causes now. But it's because I've been very lucky to be able to follow my dreams and pursue this. And it's not just like a giving back. It's almost like a responsibility. If I have these talents, these gifts, I've got to use them for good causes, and especially causes I believe in and support. There are a couple animal rescue groups in my home state, and I am their sole source of funding. I come home every year, do a big show. We lose a lot of money for it because I know these animals will not only will die, if I don't do it. And it's not because it's my way of giving back and being involved and having a positive impact on my communities, which is a global community too, but it's really just being able to use my art in a good way. I said we're doing magic tricks, not world peace, not things, but I can use my magic to help these groups who are in need.
Did you, when you were growing up, did you have a dog?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Was he your best friend?
They still are, yeah. I've always liked dogs more than people, for sure.
And Ricky Gervais says that dogs are better than human beings.
I would agree. I agree.
And so when you were a kid and you were 10 or 12 years old, did you have a dog then?
Absolutely.
What was your dog called?
Annie.
And what was Annie? What type of dog was Annie?
She was part terrier, part monster.
Okay. And so, Annie used to hang out with you
all the time, yeah.
Interesting.
And still, there's a few times I'm home now, I kind of share dog ownership with my family because I'm gone so much, but I usually want to be home with the dog, left alone with the dogs.
Last couple of questions. Talk to me about risk.
Sure.
Okay, we've got these triathlons, but that's a controlled environment. You do illusions and stuff, and so arguably there's some form of a stage risk that takes place. Are you a kind of like one of those types that likes to pursue risk?
No, not at all.
Risk?
Not at all.
Does it scare you?
For me, being in show business is risk enough.
That's a really good point, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I'm already gambling with this career, this life path is already as much a risk as I want to take. So on stage, sometimes we create the illusion of danger, but I would never put myself in a dangerous position. Now, I do risk ideas. I try things that risky may not work. We build an illusion, and the things we do, you can kind of model it, mock it up, and draw it out, but until you build a full version, sometimes you don't know. So I've taken a lot of risks. Some have worked out, some have not, where we get down this path. Oh, what if we built this illusion this way, only to get there and it was crazy. It would never work. But sometimes I'm glad I took the risk because no one's ever thought of that or tried that before.
That's an interesting point, isn't it? You know, you took the risk because nobody tried it. But for me, it's like, do you practice it before you let it see the light of day? Or have you had times when you've been on stage when literally
Yeah.
gone horrible?
No, not at all. So for me, I don't take the risk. Again, it goes back to the audience responsibility. I'm not going to put somebody on stage that's not fully ready for them. And for us, that means we rehearse not only how it goes on right, but my entire team has to know every contingency that could go wrong. So if something goes wrong in the show, the audience will never know. So now when things go wrong, it's things that are beyond our control, like the venue loses power, or the venue's curtains get stuck, or things that those are the things that happen. And then I just go out and talk to the audience, and say, hey, we're dealing with this together. We'll sit and chat until they fix it. So, but the illusions, we want to never go wrong because we've rehearsed it possibly. So even if we had an illusion in my warehouse, in my shop, it's fully ready, years of work and ready, it will not perform for an audience until I know every part of it is going to be risk-free.
You're very open and very frank with me and very transparent in the way you describe what you do and how you do it. And I think it's really refreshing to know that there's a real human being behind this potential facade, and there's a real business there that sits there as well. So I suppose my last thing to say, thank you, Rob, for coming on the show today. I appreciate you talking to me and giving us such a valuable insight into what you do, how you do it, and the business of show business.
Well, thanks for having me. I deceive people for a living, so it's great to have an open and honest conversation about the real magic behind the scenes.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.